I was thinking about this morning is how people make things a lot more complicated than what they actually really are. So, you know, what I'm talking about here is building wealth or getting to the point where you would consider yourself wealthy, whatever that is, right? So everybody has a sort of different base point. Maybe you were born in a family that's negative $100,000, and that's a lot of people. That's normal. Or maybe you were born in a family that's got $10 million. Well, at some point in the future, you're going to have a reference point. You're going to think about like, okay, what is wealthy? So that person that is negative $100,000, by the time that you're 70 years old, maybe you've accumulated $2 million and you consider yourself wealthy. Or the person that started with $10 million to their name and they accumulated $100 million, whatever that is. It's actually pretty straightforward at this point. A lot of people think that there is a lot of sort of, double backflip, tricky, sneaky things that you need to do, or there's some guy, or that there's a person that does everything for you and everything magically comes together, or you get a fancy, I don't know, you create a fancy software company and everything makes you wealthy and it just prints money. But that's not how it works. That's really not how it works. And I hate to break it to you, but you're a little delusional with how this actually works. It's very simple to actually do this. But the thing is, it's simple. Like the answer, the technical answer is extremely simple. But the behavior behind it is absolutely painful, and absolutely nobody wants to do it. So it's hard to do. So you're going to find very few people. I think I remember reading in the last few years the national sort of savings rate of people when they're, I think it was like when they're retired or getting ready to retire. I think they had like $90,000 to their name. So you could look that up. Don't quote me on it, but it's somewhere around there. So it's not a heck of a lot. Like that is not a lot, not enough to. You might think $90,000 is a lot of money. That's going to be really hard to live off of for the next 30 years, and to live off that amount is going to be very tight, very, very tight. And for the most part, you're going to be living at the sort of poverty level if that's all you have. But what you need to consider is, okay, so. I've talked about it's really hard to do. Most people can't do this because life gets in the way. It's a lot of we experience a lot of life, and we forget about that, right? Like there is a lot of life that happens between. So all of these sort of finance gurus and stuff, they sort of tell you that it's super. All you have to do is this, blah 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 blah. And in reality, there's a lot of life that gets in the way, a lot of behavior that gets in the way. That's why I actually like, although I have to caveat, his political opinions are, I don't agree with them. So, Dave Ramsey actually tells some really good truth, or some really good nuggets there, and he really does help out a lot of people with what he's doing, and what you'd have to look at is it's just the day-to-day grind. There's a couple of really simple things. So what you need to do is save money. So, 15% of 10 to 20% of your income, whatever that is, right? Your total income. So it's probably 15%. You can choose to be charitable, and that is great, and that actually will probably help you out in the long run. In terms of, and the reason why being charitable, giving, is actually going to help you out, it's because you look like a very nice person, right? Like you're actually being helpful to other people, and you get opportunities from that, right? That is not a long run game at all, or that is not a short run game at all, and you might actually sort of lose a lot. You might actually lose more by doing that than you gain. But, you gain a lot in terms of like character and feeling good about yourself, which helps you from going into sort of negative spirals and things like that, right? Like there's a lot of benefit there. And heck, if eventually you get wealthy enough that you could donate to a school, well, that's pretty good, right? So, there's all sorts of things like that. But it's really just saving that money and then acting really kind of strange in society. Actually, so the savings component is not just putting it in to a savings account that doesn't earn you enough income to beat the market. Actually, what you need to do is just invest broadly in the stock market. Anybody that tells you could beat the stock market and that they've got some sort of, and this is where everybody gets messed up, right? And this is where you get sold, or there's sleazy people out there that you can beat the stock market. It's absolutely not true. You're actually exposing yourself to more risk that can help yourself, be penalizing yourself. But what you can do is look for, an index fund, so which is just buying all of the different stocks in the stock market. So Vanguard has they're the original index fund company, and it basically it's there to match what the stock market does, and it does pretty good, and that's what you should be looking at. What the entire economy? That's basically the best companies in the entire economy are in the stock market, or one would hope they are. And if you do that, if you just buy a little bit of everything, you're sort of buying into the global economy, and you're looking at, okay, this is going to grow by a certain amount. And generally, it grows by 10%, 10 to 8 to 12, 8 to whatever % per year, but that's on average, right? So there's a lot of years where it's going to grow like 25%, and there's a lot of years where you're going to lose, 10, 20%. But over the long run, you're looking at actually making, roughly, good estimates, 10% per year. So that's why there's actually this thing called the rule of 7, so which means your money is going to double every 7 years if you invest in the stock market. So if you have $1 and you're invested broadly in the stock market, it's going to double, and it's going to be $2 in 7 years, which is actually pretty phenomenal if you're doing that saving on a regular basis, all day in and day out, and putting in that money every single paycheck. Now, the other thing, so that's the kind of secret. The other thing that you could do is, look at what the sort of Dave Ramsey strategy of investing in long-term mutual funds that are slightly more risky than the stock market, but they're extremely long run. So you can get a little bit better returns, but for increased risk. And I think he's got a formula of 4 different types. Growth, aggressive growth, international, and something else, I forget. So what you're looking for is just broad-based stocks, companies that you're betting on, right? So companies that you think are going to do well. Companies are not these sort of weird things, right? Like, they're groups of people. It's basically groups of people that somehow have figured out this sort of sweet spot in the economy that's actually doing okay. So there's that, right? But the other thing that you need to worry about, and if you did that, just that alone, you're going to do very well. But the other thing that you have to worry about, and this is the reason why it's so hard and it's all compounded together, is that there's a lot of life that happens, right? And the other thing that you have to worry about is you have social comparison. So you're looking at what everybody else is doing, and everybody else is behaving poorly, for the most part, financially poorly, whether it's training or they, have limited, ability to sort of save, all those kind of things. So you're going to see people that have a lot more than you, or it seems like they have a lot more than you. So you're going to be compelled to do things that are probably going to put you in financial peril, right? So ideally, if the best case scenario, and you're going to laugh at me, you're totally going to laugh at me when you listen to this. You should live in a tent, for 5 years at the beginning of your life. And if you do that, you can actually accumulate, and as you're working a really good job, right? Like, you get a really good job that's making you a decent salary, whatever that is, right? Like, maybe you're making $50,000 a year, which is a good salary, or you're making $70,000 a year, which is a really, really good salary, or 100, like all of those kind of things. Whatever that sort of number is, you're having a good salary. Live in a friggin' tent for 5 years or 10 years, save that money, and you're going to be very wealthy. But when I tell you that, you think that I'm living on the moon, right? And that's where the social comparison thing is, right? Like years ago, you probably would have lived in a tent many, many years ago, and you would have been able to save things, right? Like a long, long time ago. Or lived in a shack, right? Like literally a little shack, and you would have been able to accumulate wealth. But instead, we sort of expand to where society is sort of at, right? So starter homes are ginormous compared to what they used to be. You look at the sort of wartime homes in North America, and they were, 700, 800 square feet. But now, starter homes are 2,000 square feet, right? Like huge. So if you can sort of limit that. And the other thing that you need to limit or realize is that, it's not only social comparison, but realize that crap happens, right? Like a lot of crap happens in your life. You're going to have death, you're going to have divorce, you're going to have, you name it. It's going to happen. Somebody that's close to you is going to happen. Or you're going to get burnt by people that are around you. It just happens, and you can't prevent that from happening, right? Like you could do everything possible to prevent it, but it's just going to happen. Even if you're the sort of best financial person in the world, it's going to happen. So what you need to do is look for ways to mitigate that risk of something that bad is going to happen to you, right? So if you got dependents, get life insurance. If you have, reasonable life insurance, I can get into that one day. If you have, if you have a mortgage, for example, you might consider looking at sort of life insurance that covers that mortgage, all of those kind of things, right? Like very simple things, but you want to make sure that it's sort of bounded, because there is, there's a market there where people are trying to sell you crap, way too much crap that's really expensive. So you sort of bound that, and you bind that risk, right? So for most people, life insurance, it's 10 to 15% or 10 to 15 times what your income is going to be totally fine. What your current income is going to be totally fine. You're going to be okay if you get that. So little things like that really makes sense. A balloon, I think I call it like a balloon. No, it's not a balloon. It's like a blanket, coverage or something like that for people that have some wealth that's built up. I forget what it's called. It's like an insurance thing that you get that covers, if somebody sues you for $1 million or something like that, right? So you need to have those things. And so having all of these things, and you do that for a regular basis for a long time, for a few decades, 3-4 decades, that actually can turn out to be, you can actually build some substantial wealth by doing that. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't feel good in the meantime. That's what you have to sort of realize. It doesn't feel good. You're going to feel like you're left behind, and everybody's doing everything more than you, and you're being silly, or you're very conservative, or you're like whatever, you're living in the past. All those kind of things, you're going to feel it. But that's what you need to do for a long time to actually build substantial wealth. There's a reason why you see people that drive around and use cars for a long time. They actually do have a pretty good wealth if they're making a pretty good income, right? Like you can sort of look at and find those people. So that's all I want to talk about, is that it is easier than you think it is, but it's also a heck of a lot harder than you think it is, right? Like it is, life gets in the way. And you have to be ready for it and think about how you can mitigate that risk of something happening. So with that, hopefully you like this. Take care and have a wonderful day.